Okay. Um, Hello, guys. How you doing? It was while I was watching the recorded videos from last week's session that I realized that I didn't explain how to get set up with Python and every other thing you've been needing for the class. So I figured that I'd make a video for it and send it to the classroom, to Google Classroom. So basically, for the class, there would be obviously we would need Python. You need a code editor, something like Notepad, but Notepad is quite primitive, so we'll be looking at something a bit more complex. Um, you would need Git or yeah. So those are the major three things. Later we'll talk about Git. We'll talk about command line. Sorry, excuse me. Talk about command line. Those are the two in my mind right now. So now to get started, let's start with Python. You go to Python. You can search for Python on Google and then go to Python. Go to downloads. You could either sorry, excuse me. You could either click on downloads Windows or you could just directly download from here. Now the reason why I had to distinguish the two is because Python has different versions. As at January last year, Python had two distinct versions, which is Python 2 and Python 3. But they stopped production or support for Python 2, so we focus on Python 3. But even then, I'm sure some of you are familiar with how upgrades work. So you can imagine, say, you installed something in your system, and then maybe in the course of using it, everything's working fine. But then you had to upgrade something else, and then you realize that after you upgraded it, that particular other thing, some softwares are not working anymore. And so you have to upgrade the new softwares to make sure that it works. So essentially, when it comes to programming, the minute forms as simple as Python simple programming to software programs that have been developed by big companies, they usually require some specific requirements of version types. So a quick example would be like there's an app called DaVinci Resolve. I used it quite often. It worked, and then I just out of the blues one day decided to upgrade my NVIDIA graphics card. And after I did that, my DaVinci Resolve didn't work anymore. So I had to upgrade my DaVinci as well. Uh, so essentially, versions are quite important. So when you go to Python site, since you're beginners, it doesn't really matter what version you use. Personally, I prefer like 3.6. I started to try 3.8 at some point. But whatever you do, do not download any version that is 2 point something or whatnot. So download 3.9.5. Go to your download folders. I'm sure you know how to do that. Click on this. Now, uh, the simple thing, the one most important thing when you're installing Python that saves you a lot of trouble is checking this option, which is add Python 3.9 to part. If you don't do this, you likely have a lot of problems in the future. So do this now. Now the thing is that it's not that the problem is that one big deal. Sure, they're all fixable, but it's usually better not to have to go through a different uh, start looking for other solutions when there's an easy way out now. So you make sure you check add Python 3.9 to part and then click install now. Because I already have Python, I wouldn't be installing. I'll just show you how it works, but then I'll cancel it. So excuse me. So by the time that it's done, um, you should have this called IDLE. I think IDLE is called Integrated Development Learning Environment, and then this is like a compiler. So I currently have 3.8 Python 3.8 and Python 3.6, but I use 3.6 mostly. So this is where you'll be doing most of your coding in the idle. So I'm not sure how to explain this particular window. Again, to get to this window, once you type idle in your search bar, it brings out this window. I'm sorry, when you type idle, there's this option, right? And that's what you get here. If you want to make it easier for you, you can just pin it to the taskbar or pin it to your start so that you can easily just get to it anytime you need to, right? whichever case is easier for you. Now, when you open Idle, this page that you have here is like a quick page. I'm not sure how to explain it. During the former class, you would notice that I opened a quick command prompt. That was that black screen I opened last week, and I was typing some code real quick and everything. Now, what exactly what I did there is what I can do here. I can just do quick stuff like 3 plus 5 rather, or say print hello world, excuse me, or print 6 plus 9, just stuff like that. Now, uh, what you do here is not properly saved. This is not a Python code, this is just you interacting. But then when you try to save it by clicking Ctrl S, although the computer says that it's saving it as a Python file, what it's actually doing is that it's saving this content. It's just saving the text as a py file. So let me save this as test, for instance, and show you what I mean. So this is test. Now when you open it, this is not actually a code. I'm not sure if anybody's getting it. This is basically what we had in our shell. Remember, this is what we saved. It's just showing us exactly the same thing. It is not a code. So another thing you can do is, you can just say, rather than save it as a py file, I can save it as a txt file, and that would still show what I'm looking for. So that goes to tell you that Python codes are simply txt files, right? Txt files that are saved with a .py extension. And so an example of how to get a Python code is, you can just say, let me create a notepad. Let me just type a simple Python code, print hello world. So this is a txt file, but then when I save it with a .py extension, I call it script.py. Obviously, you have to change this to all and save it. You will notice what happens. Scripts. See, it changes to a Python code. So you can edit it with a code editor, but when you run it, when you put it .py, it becomes a Python code. The question now is, how do we run our Python code? So first of all, I recommend that you open it with the idle rather, and then you click on run module, and that's it. That's simple. All right. So, excuse me. If you want to have a code that you're going to be using, repeatedly, maybe you want to save a particular code, I always recommend that. Let me show you how to do this again. To do this again, rather, come to idle, open that, click on file, new file. You can do this. Write your Python code, hello Python, or whatever. Come on. Save it. Because you open this from idle, it will automatically show you Python files, so that would save you a lot of trouble. So I can say hello, save that, right, and it should show up here. Let me just, okay, there we go. That's one way to go about it. Another way to go about it is to open a notepad or a note editor, write the Python code or whatever, Control save, Control S, and then rather than save as text file, choose all file, and then call it whatever you want. Say hello2.py. Remember .py, and that's it. It should show up down here. Now, again, you can always open it by just clicking it, edit, and that. So I'm going to delete all this. It's not necessary. So that's installing Python, and you can work with this shell. So anytime I give you an assignment that requires you to write a Python code and send me the Python code, I expect you to go to File, New File, type in your code here, save it. If you want to run it, click on Run module to make sure everything works, and then send it to me. You send me this particular file. So that's how Python works. Now, if I'm sure some of you are probably advanced about this, so if you want to use a better, say you don't like this text editor that Idle provides you, you can use something called Visual Studio Code. It's actually quite good. I usually recommend that if you're learning Python from the beginning, it's probably just to focus on using Idle because it's simple. It doesn't distract you. There's nothing distracting here. But Visual Studio Code can be quite distracting. So you click on download. Excuse me. Once you download, obviously you'd install it by clicking it. Sorry, there we go. And then accept, next, create a desktop icon if you want that. Open the code. Make sure you check this. This is kind of important. I'll explain why in a bit. Make sure you check that. Add to part, obviously important. You don't need to do this. Then install. Once you start installing, everything does. But I'm not going to install because I already have it. So um, the reason why I said add to, what was that command again? Let me get it. Let me quickly get it. Let me show you the code. Accept, next. Okay, yeah. Open the code. Yeah. So imagine on my desktop I have a folder called Python scripts, and say I had one code called code1.py. Yes. Let me just create multiple versions and call them code 2, code, sorry, excuse me, code 3, and code 4. Now, the idea is that the reason I'm naming it is because they're all interacting with each other, which is something you learn eventually. But they're all together in a folder. Now, for me to work with them, I would prefer to open this entire folder in Visual Studio Code. And what do I mean by that? Let me cancel this. Yes. And when I right click, because I already enabled that option, you'd see it here. And I open the Visual Studio Code. Crap, are you serious? I think I need to install it. Because I started installing this stuff and I didn't finish it, I think it messed up something in my previous installation. So I need to install it again. The following blah 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 blah. Okay, setup is not close. Ignore there and continue, I guess. So seems like we'd have to get back to that. Keep this file, not recommended. We'll get back to this. I don't want to have to, I'm just going to cancel this and sort this out later. What I'm going to do is I basically just uninstall Visual Studio Code and then install it. It's no biggie. Point is, I'm not sure. I would have wished to show you. I'm just going to quickly do that on the back. Let that be running in the back end while we continue other stuff. Visual Studio Code. There you are. A bit later. Okay. So I install that. So while I was installing, so that is how to install Python. I believe if you have any questions, I know like Obina said, sometimes I take this, I rush things. So if I wasn't explaining things clearly, if you have any questions, let me know. For now, all you simply need to know is download Python. Once you install it, open idle, click on file, new file. This is where your code will be. And when you want to run, you click on run, run module. Now you can just put them together. So this is how I started learning. I had my code there, I had my output here. It made it easier for me. So that solves the Python part. Code editor, like I said, you could use the idle, the one that comes with idle. When you click on file and new file, this one, or you could create a notepad if you are that kind of person, or you could use Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is quite good actually. I'm just going to delete all of this. Visual Studio Code is quite good actually. And so GitHub, this is now the next thing. So what I'm going to have you do for me is that GitHub is like a thing for programmers where they store their codes. It's a bit more complicated than that. So you don't have to use GitHub actually. You just need a place where you can put your code online. Essentially, you need a place where you can put your code online. For what you'll be doing for now wouldn't be something so complicated, but I'd expect that over time you start to build things much more, crazy. So this is currently my GitHub page. Truth is, I don't totally fancy this stuff. I don't. It's like the LinkedIn version for coders because it can be very intimidating sometimes. So I use Bitbucket. They're basically the same thing. I use Bitbucket. The only difference, I think Bitbucket allows all of their solutions are private. I think I'm not sure. I remember. It's been a while. So you can create one. I recommend that you create an account. The reason is because we're going to be once you start to develop more. Sorry, once you start developing more complicated solutions, like say solutions that are actually beneficial to people out there, then you might want to consider putting them on GitHub, and then so that by the time we're done with this class, you can say that okay, these are the list of stuff I have done, right? So you might want to consider creating a GitHub account. You can download I think there's a computer setup for that. So GitHub for Windows. There's a download for that. Yeah, yeah, there's a download. I think I have it too. Yeah. So you download that. If you want to, obviously these are just they're not necessary now, but if you want to, you might consider doing that. Wow, it's gonna take some time. Okay, excuse me. Now, as I was saying, that explains the GitHub. Later in our class, we'll talk about Git, which is something I think is very important. Maybe not for classes like this, but when you start to deal with a lot of code, maybe when your code starts to get to the hundreds, the 800s, 900, thousands, and you want to be conscious of mistakes. You don't want any little mistake to ruin a lot of stuff. You would want to consider using Git. It's quite good. Um, Command line is also something that I think every programmer should know. I mean, you don't have to, go online and then have a class about it, sure, because some of the times you have to just learn this thing on the job. That's how I came to learn about it. So command line is when you type, sorry, I think I've been doing this a lot and people are probably confused as to how this comes up. I just simply tap Windows R on my computer. For me, it's the shortest way to get to CMD. You can also tap the Windows and then type CMD, same thing, whichever works for you. So I do this, and command line is basically how do you interact. Excuse me. How do you interact with this interface? I'm sure people like Ekene and Dami probably already know about this. There are a lot of it's kind of a common skills for programmers rather to be able to navigate with command line. So, for instance, many of the jobs I do, many of excuse me, many of the jobs I do as a programmer or as a freelancer would require me to work on something called a Linux environment. Now, for so that you know this, oftentimes when you start to deal with bigger projects, you probably need to run a Linux environment. So what some people did was that they partitioned their system to have a Linux part and then a Windows part. So when they log in, when you log into your system, for instance, you see this Windows page. For some people, just before it starts anything, it asks them, do you want your Linux page or your Windows stuff? And then they choose Linux. For me, I don't like that because I feel like that puts a lot of stress on the hard drive. So I installed something called Ubuntu 18. I have no idea why I'm telling you this. Point is, when I use this, this is like it's a virtual space on my hard drive where I get to interact with the computer like I said I'm interacting with Linux. And to navigate with this particular thing, I actually don't know where any of these files are. Let me just show you. So these files, dir in Linux means shows list of files. I don't know where any of these files are. So I look for it on my computer, I don't know. So I have to navigate everything in this particular Windows with Ubuntu. And that's important for programmers generally. I mean, it might not be so crazy for what you're doing now. If Visual Studio had opened, I would have shown you more in depth why that might be useful. So I think that's mostly it. Visual Studio Code is going to take some time, apparently. What we can do is I'll send you this, and then when we'll have a Q&A session, maybe on Wednesday, I can just show you how that works. So I think that's mostly it. Oh, there's one more thing. The classrooms. The classrooms. I hope most of you are already familiar with how that works. I hope you're familiar with how that works. So when you go to the page, you obviously have this stream page. Now, sometimes it can get really outdated. How's the word now? It can get so much that some of the things start to get lost under. To make it easier, just go to classwork. Currently, I'm about to post this, guys. It's our first topic. This video I'm making will be posted under setup. I'm about to post this, guys. So this will be easier for you to review, right? If I'm sorry, excuse me, stream starts to become confusing, you can just come here and then review some of this. If there's anything that I'll be putting here that wouldn't be here, sorry, yeah, would be something like an announcement, and I'll probably, reach out to you personally for that. Likely, not sure, likely. So classworks are quite straightforward, right? I'll be sending you links to some of the stuff I'm posting. I'll probably give you some assignments based on what we did last week and what we're going to do this week. All right, I think that's mostly it. So install Python, just to get started. If there's any other questions about everything I've said so far, write them down on Wednesday, or you could reach out to me personally, whichever. If you're willing to wait till Wednesday, that also works. If you want to reach out to me, let me know. If it's something that I can do in the, just like that, I'll do that. If it's something I believe that will benefit a lot of people, then I'll probably push it for Wednesday. But either ways, you should be able to, you should have enough to get started. So good luck, everyone, and cheers. Oh, before I go, like I said, I'm about to send you these files, the materials for this week. So please review that, and then send me send me like a message of when you'll be available this week. I'm personally looking at either Wednesday or Thursday, whichever works for you guys. Remember, the deadline is Friday for all the assignments. So if you're going to have questions on Wednesday, fine. If you want to have your Q&A on Thursday, fine. I'm available either days. Just let me know ahead. Everybody send me a private message so I can start to, or I'll probably just send you a poll because I kind of have the question here for that. All right, so that's about it. Cheers. Have a good week.